Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of Insight. I'm Shalini Verma. In Insight today, we are going to talk about the Right to Information Act. This act completes 7 years today. And of course, it's one of the remarkable pieces of legislation in our country, which is applauded not just at the national, but also at the international level. The Prime Minister, while addressing a meet today, said that it's very important to check the frivolous use of this particular act. Of course, it is a remarkable piece of legislation, but it also faces many hurdles. So in this edition of Insight, we'll look into the various aspects of the RTI, the journey so far, and the road ahead. Right, and joining me on the panel today is Professor M.M. Ansari. He's the former Central Information Commissioner. Welcome to the program, Professor Ansari. And Mr. Shyamlal Yadav. He's a Senior Assistant Editor with the Indian Express. Mr. Yadav has had a history of filing a number of RTIs. So I guess you have crossed the limit of 3,000 till now. But let's understand it from you, Mr. Yadav. How empowering do you think this particular legislation is?
In fact, this 7 year is not sufficient to evolve any system and to make impact through any act. But I think the RTI Act has created so much impact in this 7 years. I think except this RTI Act, no act was there which has created so much impact in India. So number of things are there. Government machinery is forced to change their functioning style. And what the Honorable Prime Minister said today, the frivolous applications, those are exceptional cases. And tell me which act is not being misused in India? Is Dowry Act not being misused? So misuse is very little number. The RTI Act, this act has forced the government machinery starting from the President Secretariat to the collectors level, at the grassroots level, everywhere you can see the change. And you know this, you must have seen that ministers, union ministers are filing their declaration of assets and liabilities. You know when this decision was taken? This resolution was passed in 1964 by the Union Cabinet, and nobody was carrying this. Unless the RTI activists filed many applications to the PMO and Cabinet Secretariat, and this UPA 2 is the first government, hopefully I have not records of earlier governments, but this is the first UPA 2 is the first government where all the ministers have filed their declarations of assets and liabilities, every minister without any defaulter. So this is the beauty of RTI Act.
This is certainly the beauty of RTI Act. But Professor Ansari, for ages we've been talking about transparency, accountability. Do you think that this particular legislation ensures and gives the rights of the citizen to check whether the government or the government bodies are accountable? Are they really transparent to the citizens or not?
Well, the Act is evolving. And in the last 7 years or so, it has made tremendous impact on in the entire society. On the one hand, it has allowed huge information to come in the public domain under Section 4, as you know. And at the same time, lakhs of people are putting up application almost every year. And of all those applications, more than 95% are being answered. That means the information is provided. So what we see is, on the one hand, huge information is already in the public domain, and again, any information which is not clearly put in public domain, people are putting up applications, and they are getting to the extent of 95% or so. Only less than 5% are rejected under Section 8(1) of that. Now, what has this achieved is that we have given certain assurances to the people, to the citizen, in terms of entitlements. For example, right to education, right to employment, right to food, right to work, and so many other human rights. Now, this act is now being used by even poorest of the poor in urban and in rural areas to get their ration. under PDS to get their admission in the schools, to get the health and other benefits, the pension, the scholarship for the students. So, to that extent what we see is that it is now being used as an instrument, as a tool to realize all those assurances, all those benefits which are assured to the people. So, it has improved tremendously in delivery of services, and at the same time it has reduced corruption of the petty nature. I am talking of petty nature, and at the same time it is now revealing, you know, the major corruption in the whole society. Let me not name them. You know, there is a whole range of debate that is going on in the country about governance and corruption. That is largely because of the use of the RTI by the people. Now, the whole debate is based on that. So, to that extent I would say that it has been used, one, to assure improved delivery of services to the people, number one, that is they are getting the entitlements. At the same time transparency has considerably improved, and again it has now raised further debates about the major corruptions. So, these are achievements. At the same time it is also you know, creating conditions for improving accountability of the system, because as I said that once the delivery of services of the to the people is improved, that means that the governance is improving. But at the same time where the corruption is still taking place, then we say that governance is yet to be improved on those accounts. So, in the sense that even though 7 years, as Mr. Yadav said, is not a good period, but at the same time we see that this act has made its own impact in the society and has created conditions for improving accountability through improved transparency in the entire system.
But as a former Central Information Commissioner, how challenging do you think it was for you while being on the post to address to all those applications?
Well, it was indeed very challenging, because when the act was passed and the Central Information Commission was constituted, we faced with huge you know, applications asking for different sets of information, and at times we were quite not clear as to whether the information should go in public domain or it should be protected, because the information which are to be protected relate to national security, economic interest of the public and private sector, it could be the personal information. So, at that point of time there was not much discussion, there was not much evidence on the basis of which one could be learning. So, it required us to devote lot of time to make things understand and see what is it which is in the public interest, you know, and accordingly we used to pass our decision notices, and we were learning a lot from the whole experience. I may also say that even before this act was passed, at least 8 of the Indian states had already introduced RTI Act in one form or the other. So, we knew the benefits of this act, we knew as to which information is to be put in public domain, which is not to be put in public domain, and that allowed us to make a better sense, a better judgment on those bases. So, I think it was indeed a challenging task, but at the same time we were learning by doing, and in due course of time it was the commission which made the whole RTI as a success.
That's right, but as the act also states, it certainly made all the public authority, the organizations computerize their documents so that there is a clear dissemination of information, and of course not just limited to a certain people, but even the media, which Mr. Yadav would certainly tell us how the media also use this RTI Act to bring out and to unravel a number of issues, whether you can call them scams or a lot of other important details. But certainly this act applies to all the states and the union territories except for Jammu and Kashmir, which comes under the state level law. Time here to take a very short break in Insight. Stay tuned for more.